all here to learn about Synology and their DSM Disk Manager system and its potential vulnerabilities, etc. And so with no further ado, I will introduce Mischa to tell us about it. So take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Can everybody hear me properly? Yes, think so? Perfect. So yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about Synology Disk Station Manager, specifically what I call the good, the bad, and the kind of sometimes ugly. But first of all, yeah, who am I? Mischa van Geelen. I did a lot in the past with incident response, pen testing, digital forensics. Recently also more into threat hunting and also more into policy writing. Yes, it's boring. But luckily sometimes in my free time I can still do this type of fun stuff. Let me see. So yeah, Synology Disk Station Manager. Specifically, we started researching this, and it's an interesting thing because, like, DSM or Disk Station Manager boots on almost every disk rack or flash station that's sold by Synology. There are millions of units around the world, and they claim themselves that there are over half of Fortune 500 actually using these type of storage products. When we look at the different Synologies primers that are out there, they actually have multiple different own maintained forks of Linux, some as old as 2013, which they try to maintain themselves. And they basically have a kind of busybox core with over 600 proprietary binaries that they make to control these things. And sometimes they say it's just a spare NAS, but often it's literally the only backup that an organization has, unfortunately. And yeah, this is kind of what's happening all the time with the important company backups. And unfortunately, I've seen this more often than with incident response than we would like to actually know. But the reason for this investigation was actually started because we did a lot of incident response and forensic investigations, and we found that Synologies or other type of NAS storage were used a lot for backups for either files or virtual machines. And ransomware attackers, we also observed, often factory reset these devices as part of their attacks, so the data would be gone. But the interesting thing is that we were almost always able to find back this data untouched, and we didn't understand why that was happening, specifically with Synologies. So we wanted to look into that. Sometimes we'll call also when they extract data, we would call that not a data breach, it's an unintended offsite backup. But the questions we had is how do these devices actually behave after they have been factory reset? Does any data stay behind? And Synology also offers this kind of remote assistance and remote support if your NAS, for example, crashes. And we also tried to understand, like, how do they do this? What do they do when they deliver this remote support? And often they do this through like AnyDesk software, that they literally look at the NAS that you have running in your network. So we first started looking at the kind of the disk layout of a individual disk of a Synology. We did that in multiple ways. One of them was literally forensically imaging this disk and just looking, okay, what's there? And maybe some of you already realized, but there's actually something missing. Anyone has a guess what's missing? I heard someone say? For example? EFI. Yeah, the EFI. The actual bootloader itself is not on the disk. So how does it boot? That was one of the things they were looking. Okay, apparently it's not booting from disk directly. So how does this work then? There should be a bootloader, right? Somewhere. Well, it turns out there is a bootloader, but it's not on the disk. Turns out that there actually is a separate storage, onboard storage on these NAS devices, which is completely separate from the disks. And it will choose under certain conditions to boot the operating system that's available on the disks. But also, and some of you spot that already, if you, for example, do not match those conditions, it goes to some emergency or recovery OS. So this is like normal operation. Many of us who have like Synologies will recognize this type of environment. And that's also why I showed that I put a nice secret file, which we will see the contents of at the end of this talk. But first, let's see, okay, what does this mean? So if certain conditions are not met, it will boot to a recovery OS. This recovery OS is pretty interesting in itself. And how can we trigger this? Well, it turns out to be very easily. Just take out the hard drive, just boot it up, and it will defaultly go there. And you can just start this wild secret OS. And what does this actually do, this secret OS? Well, as I just said, it completely runs independent from a DSM install on disk. It's a custom BusyBox OS, and it contains a lot of undocumented interesting features, and also it pretends to be a normal DSM installation guide system. And this is kind of how that looks like. So it just says, okay, there's no disks detected. It just gives you the same web interface that you're used to on the same port. So my question is, okay, what else can we do with this? Well, turns out you can do a lot with that, because a nice tool that was released from a colleague at Fox IT, Sudo, he actually released a open source tool to decrypt firmware files from Synology, and that really helped out in this research. So if you ever want to look into that, there is an open source tool available to just decrypt these type of contents. But it turns out there was an actual file in these firmware patches which contained the whole recovery OS. And there were some interesting features there. Keep in mind, the files that you see here, those are all files that you can access through the web server, unauthenticated, just by going to this file path, and that makes the Synology do things. Some of them, for example, literally a command to see the environment variables, shows that this web server itself is running on root, and everything that's executed with the CGI files are completely running on root on the system. But then what else can we do? Well, there was another interesting function, which was called start telnet. And start telnet in itself, if you would go there, it would give you a JSON response saying, okay, success is true. And then looking at this NAS station, it actually opened the telnet port for me. And this is where it gets interesting, because we also did some more analysis on the file system itself, and you see that all these type of CGI files are combined into a single compiled Linux binary. But now comes the easy thing. The password for this is based on the date and time, the date and month, and it will take the greatest common denominator, and it will literally give you, that's the password for logging into telnet. And if it does not have an NTP server, so it doesn't know its time, it's 1010101 to log into these devices. So I made a small script to just generate this, and just tried it, and then I'm logged into telnet. So then I was like, okay, this is getting interesting, but it's not only weapons, so what else can we do? Well, back to those research questions. Ransomware attackers, like I said, often perform factory resets on these devices as part of their attack, so the backups are gone. And we still did not understand why we could recover this data that easily. Well, we actually started wondering, does this functionality, which really claims, and it really states like your data will be completely removed and it will be all to default settings, and I understand that all my data will be deleted forever and be unrecoverable. Does it actually do what it says that it does? So we started looking into these specific binaries because with Synology, it's really every interface or every button you click just translates to a binary and a specific action. It's all running like this, weirdly. So we started looking at this binary called Synology DS default. As you can see, it shows, for example, if you would run this on the command line, it would show you a nice instruction set, a manual saying, okay, hey, we have a reset config function, we have a reinstall function, a factory reset function. And this factory reset function, it specifically states it includes the removal of all data volumes. It's the same function actually that would be called if you would click that button in the interface. So we started looking into that, and we started identifying, okay, which actual underlying functions are in the binary which do this. And we found the factory reset one. Does anybody see a slight problem with this factory reset function? All this function does is to create a file called .restore to default on the disks and then reboot itself. And when it reboots itself, and we actually checked it, hey, is it there? Yes, it's there. And when it reboots itself, it now automatically goes into recovery OS mode, and it doesn't allow you anymore to go into the normal OS. So we started checking this out. Okay, what does this mean? Does this mean that the RAID configuration, anything is gone? Does it mean nothing happened? And keep in mind, it takes this Synology approximately 5 to 10 minutes in which it does literally nothing. It seems to just sleep. And then start itself up again into recovery mode. And this is what I would call more like optical data removal. So basically, it doesn't do anything at the data. It leaves everything intact. It just pretends like it's not there anymore. So then we were like, okay, can we actually reverse this? And there's, I think, multiple ways to reverse this. And one of them is what we would call more or less the hard way, which is, yes, we can reverse it. You would reboot nothing to recovery mode, you would go into the file system, and you would literally remove this file from disk, and then restart it, and then it acts like nothing ever happened, and it just continues to just give you the data. That will be the hard way. The lazy way is actually using the undocumented feature that Synology made for this themselves. And if you would literally boot it, visit this page, and then reboot it, the data is accessible again. And then we have that secret file that we were talking about. That's just back. It contains a nice little statement. So I'm actually seeing that I'm going very fast through the time, so we have a lot of time for any questions, but I have one more thing. And that's, as of today, we published a tool that completely automates any analysis on a Synology device. You can check if it's in recovery state. You can automatically make it go into the telnet mode and analyze the disks. And you can also just use that nice little flag to recover any forever lost data. So now it's time, I think, for questions, and we'll leave this on screen for anyone who wants.
I have a question to start. Do you have any insight on how the hackers actually reset the devices to default if they don't know the passwords?
Well, what they usually do is they either get into they somehow get to know the password, and there is a white paper that we will publish, which is going to be in the coming weeks, which gives a lot more detailed insight into all the other functions that are available. So that would be there.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Cool. Thanks. Here we go.
Hi, I have two of these. I've poked around on the inside some, but not too much because I don't want to break them. It's not surprising to me that the secret OS is in there. If you buy it, it doesn't come with hard drives and it boots up. It has to be able to format the hard drives. I'm shocked that the delete function is just a don't look in here, and not that surprised, I guess, a little bit shocked. But then if you follow if you're in that state and then you proceed, you're going to repartition your drives and format them under a normal workload. So I can see how a sloppy engineer would miss that step, I guess. But it really does sit there for 10 to 15 minutes doing nothing?
Yeah.
Just touching the file repeatedly?
No, it just literally touches a file and then goes to sleep.
Okay. So now my question, sorry, that was a comment, not a question. Have you learned anything about, so it is possible to set these up so they're exposed to the internet, which that gives me the heebie-jeebies. Mine is behind several layers of hiding. Do you have cases of people breaking in directly into them when they discover these things are just sitting on the public internet?
So there's multiple, this is specifically the recovery OS state in itself. And there have been cases, of course, in the past with vulnerabilities in the main OS. But those were mostly like authentication-related problems and publicly exposed EVs. This is actually documented. This is undocumented features that they use as Synology remote support to help out anyone who does something stupid with their individual system. And what I also observed is that a lot of the way that they built this recovery OS, they try to somehow do with authentication on the main OS side, but they sometimes forget some stuff. So they basically just made it distill, like you said, if it doesn't have any disks. But for example, and I don't encourage anyone to do that, if you go now to a second-hand store and you buy Synology NAS with hard drives, chances are that if someone properly did their homework and factory resetted it, nothing is gone at all. You don't give up your hard drive, I know.
So did you contact Synology and what did they say about that?
They basically, from what I understood, and also they in remote support sessions, they consider this normal functionality. This is the way that they want this to function. Yeah.
For data recovery, one thing I would like people to know is I currently have one of my three Synology with one drive redundancy, two failed drives. Both are still used, all data readable and writable. If anyone ever sees the error hard drive power failure, power down, replace your power supply. Do not check it for integrity first. The power supply is dying.
Did you actually find a way to delete the data, which is supported by the vendor as well? And I mean, like actually overwrite the data, not just on a file system level?
There is a way to, like, if you completely erase just the volumes within DSM as individual volumes, then yes, it will remove the initial LV configuration, Linux volume group configuration. However, even copies of that configuration are stored in a so-called history file, which you could just copy back, and then the volume will pop it back to life.
Okay. Oh. Does the Flash operating system ever get updated?
Well, I have observed that the current version that I have installed on the disk station, even though the path file that contains a Flash that contains an update of this OS, it's still an older version. So I'm still trying to figure out what's a way to properly update this internal OS. But for my version, at least, it didn't seem to change it.
I've got another question, which is, knowing everything you know, do you think that the advantages of being able to get your data back, if you do something silly, outweigh the data security side? And would you use Synology or another vendor going forward?
I would not use Synology, but in several cases, in several ransomware cases, we were able to recover data because the attacker simply just used the factory reset function. Because they also trusted Synology enough, apparently, that the data would really be wiped. So in this case, even though I don't agree with the way of implementation and that it's completely undocumented, it did help out in some cases.
Another angle, you would, to gain access to the recovery system remotely, you would need to have physical access to the device, because you have to remove the drives first, right?
There are several ways that you can enter the recovery mode.
Are there, or would you think there's other ways to enter the recovery OS without physical access to the device?
There is, I think, a way to, well, of course you could just create the flag yourself if you have access to the system, and then it will go there. But there are some other ways. There is in the other functions that I walked through, like the the reinstall function. It doesn't create this restore to default function. It actually creates another state, which is called a .system_crashed state. And this way, the OS or the recovery acts like the whole system itself crashed, which also causes a similar situation in which it will boot to the recovery OS. But these are the two ways that I found that you could access it. But there might be more ways to actually invoke this behavior.
I have a Synology in a place where I cannot travel right now, like in another country, and it's version 6 and not 7. And I specifically upgrade because I'm afraid like something can happen and it's a game over kind of. Can I use the recovery thing to issue an installation if it failed, for example, in the middle of the process of upgrading from 6 to 7?
I think you can, from the recovery OS, you can actually also initiate an upgrade. Yes, there is a specific CGI function that allows you to upload this path file and do that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Oh, yep.
Do you know if the recovery OS kicks in after a power failure of the Synology?
Sorry?
Do you know if the recovery OS kicks in after a power failure of the Synology?
I have tried it multiple times, and I have seen it kick in one time when it mismatched the two different disks in the RAID setting. There has been one time in which I managed, when there was two disks on a two-bay size model, that would kick in after it saw a mismatch between those two disks.
Because then you're really vulnerable, I guess, for attackers.
If you have this device set up to be connected to the internet, it will open the same port 5000 to the internet at that moment.
Yeah, even if you use multiple factor authentication.
Because the whole authentication mechanism is gone, and it's just a password based on the date.
Okay. Thank you.
A few slides back, you had a slide where you had some assembler code. How did you actually get that, or did you use Ghidra?
You mean?
Yeah, it was quite a bit back.
Probably this.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, this is actually the live analysis that I did, the static analysis using IDA on these binaries that were invoked. For example, what I did is observe, for example, clicking the button in the interface and directly observing with breakpoints and with memory analysis what binary it was actually calling out, and then statically analyzing this binary too. And the fun thing is you see that it's the same behavior. You literally see that the binary says that it should do this, it should been touched to create this file, and when we observe, the file is actually there.
Okay, but what tool did you use to
IDA Pro.
Okay, I've never heard of that, but thank you.
Cool. Any last questions? Oh, yep. Go, yep.
Thank you. Hello, testing. Hi. Thank you for the talk. You said you wouldn't recommend Synology, but would you recommend another brand of NAS that you're not sponsored by?
Well, I've heard some other talk here that you should watch back about QNAP, so I wouldn't advise that either, because they apparently had a 0-day very recently. And I myself have set up some free NAS open source in the past. But then again, I think the best advice is please don't connect this type of stuff to the internet.
Cool. Okay. So we had another question. Oh, what's that?
Did you do any research on the encryption functionality? Is this bogus too, or can we trust it?
I think we should wait for the white paper that's going to be published for that in the next few weeks, because there we have more detail than I could fit into this talk.
Where will we find your white paper that's coming out? Where are you going to publish that?
I'm going to put it on the same GitHub and on the website, on my website.
Super.
So if there's not any more questions, or then
yeah. So well. Yeah, thank you very much. Oh,
thank you.
We've got one last question. Should we go for one
yeah.
last question? Go on, and then we'll have a big round.
So the recovery OS has like the port hard-coded, which it opens. So the question is, for the main QNAP OS, you can probably change the port of the web interface, or is that not possible?
For the Synology, you mean?
Yes, sorry. For
for the Synology, it defaults also to 5000 for the normal OS.
So there's no way I can make it go to different ports?
Probably you can change some configurations if you go into the CLI and change some web config around, but by default, not.
Okay, thank you.
You can change it, but it's like, it's in settings as well. Okay. Yeah. So yes. But by default, if you would...
Has the recovery as a PMP function? Does it open automatically the ports?
Yeah.
With your PMP?
Yeah.
AV, I mean opening the ports on the router. The Synology himself opens the port, it's okay, but does it also open it to the internet? Because if I have the ports opened via UPnP,
yeah,
then if the recovery OS does it also, we have a trouble. Otherwise, no. If I'm in a normal system, then okay, the port should be open, but not in the recovery, of course.
I did not specifically do UPnP, no. So only if you have it port forwarded, like then yes. But there's a lot of people unfortunately doing that. Which is not.
Also true.
All right. Cool, brilliant. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.